Breaking records in the city where I live.
Breaking records. 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 Breaking records.
Welcome to the debut episode of Breakin Recordz. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. What is Breakin Recordz? Basically what I did was I took the idea of separating the future music podcasts that I would have done on my Fresh is the Word podcast and just did them into its own podcast itself, just so I can organize things and promote everything better. I'm happy I'm doing this. And along with the separation, I also am starting another podcast that will debut later on this week called Renaissance Soul. That'll be dedicated to Detroit music history. And for that first episode, I'll have my interview with Detroit hip-hop artist Big Tone about his album Big Shoes that he did with DJ House Shoes. But we're talking Breakin Recordz right now. And for the first episode of Breakin Recordz, I give to you my interview with Dia Frampton, one half of the sister duo of Meg Dia. Back on July 25th, Meg Dia surprise released a new album, Happysad, via Pure Noise Records after publicly disbanding 7 years prior. The newly reunited sister act put out their best work with Happysad, in my opinion. And during our conversation, we get into the reasons the sisters got back together to make music again. Dia also talks about her time as a solo artist, being on The Voice, and dealing with being signed to a major label. It was a great conversation with Dia Frampton, and she opened up a lot about the struggles behind Meg Dia breaking up in her solo career. Plus, she shed some light on the relationship she's had with her sister Meg over the years and how it has evolved. Recently, after this interview was recorded, the duo did announce that their Christmas album, December Darling, dropping on November 15th. So go ahead and pre-order that. All right, without further ado, let's get on to the interview with Dia Frampton, one half of Meg Dia. Just out of the blue, it's like, yo, we get a new Meg Dia album, like right out of the blue, surprise. And I was already excited about that, but then when I actually listened to it, I was like, yo, it blew away all my expectations, man. I was like, I'm gonna put it out here. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but yo, best Meg Dia album ever.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really, really good. It was really good. So let's get into it, man. Like, you guys were broken up for a while. You did your things. Your sister did her things. So, you know, what kind of happened to where you reunited to make music again?
Well, Meg and I had split kind of right after The Voice. We did a tour together with Blake Shelton, and things just got weird. The dynamic had shifted, and our relationship took some hits. So we just kind of had a falling out, to be honest, and we didn't speak to each other for a while. It wasn't a rude, we're not talking kind of thing, but we just had stopped calling and stopped chatting and stopped being friends the way we had used to. So we'd still see each other at Christmases with our family and stuff and hang out, but it was very different. And it happened like that for years until I personally just really missed Meg, and I missed our relationship, and I missed writing with her, and I didn't really know how she felt, but it turned out that she felt the same way. So I was the first one to bring it up. I called her, and I was really, really scared because I was nervous she would say no.
Yeah.
And I just asked her, hey, do you have any interest in playing music again? And it really was a very light request. I wasn't thinking about releasing an album or touring or doing any of this stuff. It really was just, I missed making music with my best friend. And I didn't know it, but she had felt the exact same way, and that's what she told me. And she said she had been envisioning us playing music back together, and that I called her on the seventh day that she did that. Because Meg's very spiritual. She meditates a lot.
Yeah.
She does a lot of visualization work. So she said that she had kind of been visualizing us on stage together, and then I called her. So it was something that we mutually wanted, and it came about somewhat organically at the right time for both of us.
You know, without getting too personal, you know, what do you feel like happened all those years ago, and what's different now?
I think we kind of started taking each other for granted. We just assumed we would always be playing music together and that we'd always be together in everything that we did. And we started just not trusting each other as much, not listening to each other as much. And doing my solo album, it was definitely a different dynamic. Universal picked up the option for my record right after The Voice. And so I was kind of thrust into that world. And it was different just being alone in that. The spotlight has shifted, and that was weird for both of us in different ways. And so we just had I don't even know how to really explain it. It seems so long ago now. We were both kind of lonely together in a weird way.
Yeah.
We stopped communicating, and I was writing a lot of songs on my own with different songwriters and these big producers Universal would set me up with, and I felt like Meg didn't have as much of an artistic voice, or she did, but nobody was really paying any attention to it because they just wanted to rush this CD out as quickly as possible. And I wasn't aware of that, and I wasn't helping facilitate that. And there was a lot of little things, but
Right.
It kind of just came to a big impact on the Blake Shelton tour when we were on the last day. Meg just said that she quit, and so that was kind of the beginning of our end for a little while.
Yeah, those little things can always just, you know, accumulate over time, and then you realized you're kind of buried under all those little things.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I didn't realize it at the time, because you never do, but under the pressure and stress of kind of this new thing and this new hope with, you know, getting on Universal and being on a major label again, I started to grasp onto things too tightly and take things way too seriously. And I think that changed me as a person. And I was actually having a talk with our bass player who's been with us for, I think, over 10 years now, and he just said that I stopped being as fun, and I had too much pressure and too much stress on me, and it just made me take music almost too seriously, or I guess I should say the business side of music too seriously.
Yeah.
And that was something that was interesting to hear from somebody that was not Meg, because sometimes when sisters and family members tell you something, you think, yeah, well, you don't really know what you're talking about. You're my family. But sometimes when a respected friend tells you the same thing, you can listen with different ears. Because it's easy to shut down somebody that's really close to you, and get defensive.
Yeah. How does it feel now that you've reunited with your sister? You made a whole album together. You're making music with her again. You know, what's different than in the past? You know, even before things kind of went downhill.
There's so many things that are different. I feel like we're finally, because during my solo career, I was just really lonely, and now I feel like finally we're doing all the things together again, because it was really sad for me to be doing things then that I thought we would have been doing together when we were daydreaming as little kids. I it was always Meg and I doing these things together. And then when it was just me, it was this lonely thing, and there was no joy in it. So now it's just really amazing to be doing all of these things with Meg together and writing music and touring. And I mean, this is a weird example, but we're touring in September, and we were working on the budget and how we can afford to travel, and should we get the van, should we get a trailer, what kind of amps do we need, how much space will that take in the van, how many hotel rooms do we need for how many people. So there's so much that goes into touring, and I was getting really, really stressed out, and I kind of answered all the questions without a lot of knowledge. And then Meg, who's in Prague right now, she's traveling all over the place, she wrote back and answered everything in a very business-minded way, because Meg handles her money way better than I do. And she kind of put out the numbers, and if we do this, we can save some money, and I think this is important, and I think since we'll get a better sound check, we won't need a front of house guy for these shows, so we can save money there. And she just put me completely at ease with this email that I was freaking out about overnight.
Right.
You know, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose so much money on this tour, and maybe my friend can come out and do merch for us, and we won't have to hire a merch person. And then Meg just put everything down, and I was calm, and that's kind of our dynamic in a lot of different ways. Meg will start freaking out about something, and I'll call her and say, dude, it's totally fine. We'll play this song, and we'll do it this way, and it'll be great. And then we just kind of calm down, and it's kind of fun to share everything like that, and we just are always kind of putting out each other's fires is what it feels like.
Right. Talk more about your dynamic with your sister. Like, you know, how do each of you sort of like help each other? Like you already touched on it, but you know, just in general, what is that dynamic? How do you help her? How does she help you just in general?
Yeah. We're very, very different, and we're just now kind of realizing that, because sometimes when you're with somebody so closely, you can think of yourself as a unit, not because you necessarily think of yourself that way or yourselves that way, but because people always talk about you that way. So you can kind of lose your identity in that. But I think the thing that's been the most important to our reuniting has been realizing our differences and paying attention to that and nurturing each other. But there's a lot of different ways. In the writing room, Meg is a lot more quirky. She doesn't really listen to, quote, like the songwriting rules. After The Voice, I was signed at Pulse for a little while as a songwriter, just as a songwriter. So I worked a lot writing for different artists, writing for artists overseas. I co-wrote a song that Haim performed. Sorry. I'm not in with the kids these days. I
think it's Haim, yeah.
And just for different TV shows, for placements. And
okay.
So I was kind of working as a songwriter for years. And sometimes that can actually pull you out of your joy of music, because, you know, when I get in a room and somebody says, I want a song like this, I want it to sound like something you'd listen to when you're cruising down the PCH and you're in California and it's summertime. And so they kind of put you into this box.
Yeah.
And then you try to deliver the best product. It kind of turns out to be a product. And at the time when I first signed to Pulse, I just really wanted to prove myself. So I said yes to a lot of projects that didn't really hit me emotionally, because I was scared of saying no, thinking that, oh, they're going to think I'm lazy or they're going to think I'm ungrateful. So I would say yes to a lot of things that I didn't really want to do. And finally, after years of letting go of the fear of being fired or people thinking things of me, I started being way more selective about the things and the projects that I was a part of, which changed the writing completely, because then I loved these artists and I was a big fan, and so I would do my best work. But anyway, getting back to your question, I kind of started writing in these ways with these rules and these thoughts that I had learned and picked up from different writers. And Meg hasn't been in any kind of writing rooms like I have. Meg just writes at home. She writes, you know, whenever she wants, about whatever she wants. And so Meg would send all these snippets, and they were kind of all over the place in the best way. You could tell that if she wanted a 1-minute intro, then she wanted a 1-minute intro. And if she wanted a chorus that never repeated again, then that was it. And so for us, dynamically as songwriters, I would take something that was really quirky and weird and kind of hone it more. I definitely write more pop than she does, and she definitely writes more indie alternative.
Yeah.
So when those two things married, it actually worked really well, because Meg would bring something really interesting and unique, and then I would kind of pull it in this way, or make it a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be. I guess something that I really like pop music, to be honest. So
right.
I would, you know, say, hey, maybe we can just repeat this part again. It's really good. Or like, this part can be cut. I was almost an editor in a way. But on other songs like Dear Hearts, we just wrote that piece by piece, almost like pen pals, because Meg lives in Utah. So she would send a verse. I really loved it. I would write a second verse, and then vice versa. We would just kind of go back and forth with different lines. So that worked out. But Meg and I are just very different in a lot of ways. I'd say I'm way more silly and ridiculous, and Meg is a bit more spiritual, but she's also a big nerd, so I guess she's ridiculous as well. But we definitely balance each other out, for sure.
So the new album, Happy Sad, is out now. It was a surprise album, just came out of nowhere. It was awesome. Like, after you're done with this album, you know, what was your sort of thoughts and feelings about it? You know, this is the first Meg Dia album in a long time. You know, what were you feeling about, like, this thing that you created?
I was really afraid. But that's another thing that Meg kind of calmed me down with. I was talking to Meg, and I was kind of freaking out, and I was getting really intense and kind of being a little bit of a brat all day. And Meg was like, you need to calm down. I think you're acting really intense right now and controlling because you're afraid that that this album isn't going to do what you want it to do. And so you're clinging to it too tightly, and you need to just let it go and let it be what it is and relax. And she was totally right. And I looked at her. I remember I was driving in the car, and we were stuck in traffic. And I looked at her, and I said, what if this album doesn't do well? Like, what are we going to do? And she looked at me like I was the dumbest person in the world. She was like, we're going to make another album. You know?
Right.
And I thought, oh, yeah, we can. Like, we can. Because sometimes I always think if this, quote unquote, fails, then, like, that's it for me. You know, I can get really dark and negative about myself a lot. And Meg was just like, what are you talking about? We're musicians. We're going to write another album. Don't you like this album? Like, if it doesn't do commercially well, who cares? We'll write another one. And that was Meg's viewpoint, which is so much more healthy. And it's totally true, and it put me at ease. But Happy Sad was definitely a big stepping stone for us. I never really thought it would come about, and it did very naturally. When we first started playing music together and writing music together, we weren't thinking about business. We weren't talking about, we should make an album, we should release it here, we should get a label. It really was just nice to just write and mess around for a very long time before we even discussed any potential release. And
what you were kind of mentioning about, like, from your perspective, like, what if this fails? You know, there definitely has been, times in the music industry where a lot of that pressure has been put on artists. But things are different now. Like, if, let's just say, this album did fail miserably, like, you can just make another album, just like your sister said. It will be fine, things are different now. And from what I heard from the album, I think, it's and like I said, probably some of the best stuff you two have ever done. Like, what has been the reaction now that the album is out?
It's been really good. And my mom says it's her favorite album in the world. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Then there you go. There you go.
No, but it's been good. I feel good about it. Meg feels good about it, and I think that's the most important thing. We feel like we did everything we wanted to do, and we're with a very small indie label, Pure Noise, and they're just like, we know everybody there. It's just a few people in an office in Pasadena, and so they really never pushed us to put a song on here that we didn't really like that much, or try this demo or do this. They really, surprisingly, they've been so hands off in a very good way. And of course they give their opinion when it is needed and we need help. But we just sent in the songs and they just said, "Great, this is awesome." And we didn't hear anything that, I would expect to hear when we were with Universal or with Warner Brothers, like, "Oh, you need like a rocking banger, there's no single here, like, where's the single? We need to get back in the studio and write a single." There was none of that. It was just, okay, here's the songs, and they said, "Cool, let's release it on this day," and that was it. So that was a really interesting process as well. But it's been great. Meg and I have been keeping up with people's comments as much as possible online, and people seemed receptive and nice, and there's definitely some people who are like, "This isn't Monster," which is fine, I'm like, I'm also not 17 anymore, but
Right.
But you can't win it all, so.
All right, we got to talk about this video for American Spirit. Like, whoa, like this is like, this is like a horror movie, man. I'm like sitting there like, I'm like, all right, this looks, cute, and I'm like, then like, yo, fam, like, yo, people are dying, dog. This is like one of the best videos I've seen recently, man. Like, talk about the making of the video for American Spirit.
Man, after making American Spirit, I don't think I'll ever be able to make another music video in the regular way. And for people who don't know, usually when artists make music videos, what happens is, if you're with a label, they'll send the song out to maybe a handful of directors, and the directors will send back treatments. So, for example, for the Broken ones that I did on my solo career, they sent in the treatment that I chose, and then there was another one, you're in a room, there's a piano, everything turns gold or whatever, and then another director sends in something, you're on an island, you're on a boat, whatever. So you kind of just, for a lot of artists, especially me then, when I was, not really sure of my voice and what I wanted to say completely, I would just say, okay, like, that one seems the best one. I was a little bit more hands-off. And that's what happens with a lot of artists, is they'll just choose the best director for the job. Everything, especially with the size of our label and just Meg and I being our own team, has been so much more hands-on for this new run. Even our merch, like, I went to the print shop and tried on every single T-shirt for merch to make sure it fit well, because Meg and I used to not really know what our merch looked like or how it felt or how it fit or the designs. We just kind of signed off on things because we didn't really know you could be more interactive. And I was literally at the print shop just trying on T-shirts like, no, this one's itchy. No, this one's too big. No, this doesn't fit girls right. So back to the music video. I was a big fan of Simon Kesh, the director, and he did this short film that is incredible. It's called Controller. And my boyfriend at the time showed me this short film, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this short film is incredible. So I looked up Simon, I became a big fan, found out that he did music videos, and then I looked up the music videos that he did, and he did Kygo, and he did Ed Sheeran. And I thought, he's never going to do our music video. Our budget is so small. We're a tiny band. So I Instagram messaged him thinking he's not going to respond. And he did. And he said, yeah, let's jump on the phone. Let's jump on an email. Here's my email. Send me the new music. And I was so surprised he even responded. And the thing about Saman was he didn't want to just send Meg and I a treatment and say, okay, cool. He spoke to us on the phone, and he said he wanted to get to know Meg and I, and he also wanted to get to know us separately because he thinks we have a different dynamic and we have different personalities, and he wants to see the sister dynamic and who's who and who wears the pants and who does what.
Right.
So he really took some time to get to know us before we sought any treatment at all. We spoke on the phone. We got on a Google Doc. We went and got pizza together. We went and met up at the Miss Robot headquarters. We went and just talked over coffee. Like, we really got to know each other as people before the treatment even came about. And then it really was based on our relationship. And Saman's really great at taking a small budget and doing wonders with it. So it came about that way. And Meg and I just really loved him. And then he brought on Justin Hopkins to co-direct. And Justin is an incredible artist and just killed it. And we fell in love with these two people. Meg and I just love them to death now. And we felt like they really took care in representing us. And we wanted to represent kind of like a rebirth in this music video. But it was really, really fun to make.
Yeah, like after seeing that video, I was like, yo, I don't ever want like an automated robot machine like directing me. Like, you better have like an old VHS camera that you put over your shoulder, like if you want to like film me at all.
Yeah.
That was like one of those that was like one of those horror those thriller flicks where everything looks all like nice and pretty, but then like, yo, some crazy shit goes down.
Yeah. No, it was definitely fun. Very.
I remember
very fun.
I remember back when I first interviewed you back in 2012, either you really wanted to go do shows in Korea or you're about to. Like, has that happened since?
I'm not sure. I did go over to Korea and do this really bizarre reality singing show over there. I'm not sure if that was before or after, but yeah, this company called me and called my manager and just said, does Dia want to come over to Korea? We'll pay for her flights, we'll pay for her hotels and everything, if she wants to come over and do the show. And honestly, I'd had enough of reality TV for singing shows.
Right.
But it had been a really long time since I'd seen my grandma, my cousins, and I didn't have money to go over there, and they were going to pay for my hotel for over a month. So I went out there and I played and I performed. It was an interesting experience, I'll say that. But I did get to hang out with my family, my grandma, my cousins a lot, and that was the best part of the whole trip.
Okay, great. Glad you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Like
they definitely in Korea they definitely have a different work ethic. So sometimes I would be performing at 4 a.m, and it was a very different experience from The Voice. Right.
In a lot of things that we've talked about, you're mentioning, when you were under like a major label like Universal, and even doing the songwriting through Pulse, that you were, at times you were timid about certain things. Maybe you would just kind of do things just so they wouldn't think badly of you. Have you been able to work out a lot of that in the recent years with dealing with your songwriting and working with your own business? Do you feel a bit more confident now?
Yeah, I do. I think saying no is a really powerful thing, and I've learned that whenever I say yes to doing something that I don't really feel in my heart that I want to do, even if it's just going to meet up with somebody for coffee, then it just ends up being a bad experience, or I end up not being fully present, or I end up not turning in a good song because I didn't want to be there in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think saying no is so powerful, and it gets difficult, especially being in Hollywood, where I feel like, now being an actor, being a musician or whatever, you just feel like you have to say yes to everything. So it gets difficult. But you have to just stand your ground, because you're just going to turn something out that's not good. And I've always been a little bit strained with money being in the entertainment business. And the weirdest thing is, I got a job at a restaurant as a waitress, and I've been working there for a while now. And that's actually alleviated so much of my stress and has allowed me to say no to a lot of music projects, because initially when I would say, well, I really need this money, if they cut this song or if they use this song in this TV show or whatever, I really, really need this money. Right. But now just picking up a day job, I feel more comfortable that, I can pay my rent this month because I'm working. So no to this. There was a DJ that offered me a good amount of money to sing on a song, and it was a good amount of money, and I just didn't really feel the song. Right. And I said yes, and then I wrote back later that night and said no, and it killed me, because I was like, oh, I could go to Europe, I could pay for 2 months rent, and and I just said no. I need to say no. Something that is more fitting is going to come, and I need to throw this out in the universe. This isn't what I want to do. And I said no, and that was really hard for me to do.
I think, a lot of times, whether you're an actor or you're in the music industry as a music artist, the idea of having a day job, to a lot of people, it makes it feel like you're kind of a bit of a failure in the past, or you're not where you're at. But I feel like that idea is sort of changing, where it gives a lot of people more freedom. Those day jobs are in service of your art now, so that you can be more choosy, and you can be much more happy with the things that you're working on. Is that how you feel about it?
I do. It does offer some freedom, and just being able to relax and not live in fear, I guess, because when I feel like financially I'm struggling, I start to live in fear, and then I make decisions that come from my fear. And it's been really nice to just be able to make a better decision with a more clear-minded head that's not, worried that my electricity is going to turn off next month. It's been really, really nice. And I truly believe that when you say no to things that don't make sense for you, things that do make sense will start to come your way, because you're going to attract it to you. And I do believe in
definitely
in trying to be as positive as possible, and just having faith that things will start to work out. I've seen a lot of coincidences in my life that have been eyebrow raising, that have just been really, really nice.
Right. Well, you're sounding like the spiritual one also.
I think Meg has rubbed off on me a lot, but this was definitely not me a year or two ago. I was pretty negative. So that has changed a lot for me, because I would take, if I'm going in for an audition and I wouldn't hear back, I would take that personally, like something was wrong with me. If I get offered a show and then they're not sure about, the lineup or whatever. There's just a lot of no's in our industry, and it can get difficult if you take everything personally. And I've tried to stop doing that. I definitely have my bad days.
We all do.
Yeah. So I definitely have that, but I don't cling to them as much as I used to, I guess.
Well, I'm happy that you're in a better place then.
Thank you.
What, aside from, the album's out now, you guys have a string of dates that you're going to be touring on. Aside from that, what are some other things that you're working on, or at least hope to work on soon?
Well, I told you I'm going to a scuba diving class later today.
Yes.
That will be interesting. It's my first one, so I can't really give you any information about how bad I will be yet. I guess if I'm bad, I might die, right? I'll just be like, where's the air again?
Right.
I'm doing a play right now in Los Angeles, which has been really, really fun. Live theater has been really amazing. I'm studying at UCB Improv again. I graduated from the school. It's Amy Poehler's kind of comedy school here in LA, but I graduated a while ago, but I've been really interested in just getting back into it and staying in practice. Because everybody knows once you graduate from somewhere, that doesn't mean you're a pro by any means.
Right.
You just went through the curriculum, but I haven't been back into it for a while, so I'm going to start taking classes there again. And I've been taking film and TV classes and reading a lot. I'm reading Commonwealth by Ann Patchett right now, which is super great. I'm just trying to stay busy. I think when you are an artist, it's really important to have different hobbies. I was listening to, I think it was Nick Offerman. He was on a podcast and he was talking about all of his woodworking, and he makes furniture and he makes tables, and how that has been such a blessing for him. So it's not just all acting. What's the next job? Did I get this audition? And I think for any creative out there, it's so important to get involved in something. And if you don't have a hobby or something that you can think of, even charity work, getting involved with the community, I've been doing that a lot. That's been really eye-opening and has been showing me a different way of life, I guess, changing my beliefs about things that were subconsciously planted when I was a kid.
Right. I think that's what a lot of people are going through these days.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy just to have an eye-opening experience, because you really do shape a lot of your beliefs when you're a kid, and then as you get older, you're like, oh, that's not true. I worked with Homeward LA recently, and it's this foundation that raises money for this shelter in Skid Row in LA that helps rehabilitate homeless people. And that was really eye-opening for me, just to be around all these people and hear their stories and hear where they came from. And, I grew up where people were always talking about homeless people like, oh, they're lazy, or they're just addicts, or they don't want to work, or they don't want to do, and like I captured some of those beliefs. I'm like, oh, they just must not care about life. They just want drugs. But when you hear their stories and where they came from and where they grew up, how could they not end up where,
right,
where they did? And all these people are trying to get out. And it was that kind of thing where I was like, wow, I was really closed-minded. And I just thought they kind of just ended up on the street magically. Just some people that I was around when I was growing up, they called them bums. They weren't homeless people. And so I had that kind of mentality deep-seated, that I thought, wow, I'm judging all these people before I even hear their story, and these people are trying to grow up. And this person, he was homeless when he was 10 years old.
Right.
And it's just really learning about the human condition and I don't know. I really, Homeward LA, everybody check it out. It's really amazing. It's really eye-opening, and it changed everything for me with the epidemic that's going on in LA right now. But it definitely showed me some of my subconscious beliefs that I had locked in as a kid that were completely ridiculous. Anyway, I've digressed now. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's definitely like, not everybody has been, dealt the same hand, same cards in life. So
oh, yeah.
There's some people that it just, things didn't work out, or things aren't, things, not as lucky as some other people, not as blessed as other people.
Oh, yeah. It's some of these stories, actually almost all of these stories are just so heartbreaking. And homelessness starts for a lot of them at a very young age when, they didn't have some of the parents that we were lucky to have, or the school, or the community, the religious community, whatever it is. It's pretty, yeah, people come from all different places, and it's just about being aware and being empathetic and not judging people so quickly.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, get into a charity or something. If you're starting to get all praised about your own life, or what can you do, or, you know, it's such an important thing to dive into, I think.
Right. All right, Dia, it's been great talking with you, catching up with you again after all these years.
You too.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, the new album, Happy Sad, it's out now everywhere, and it's such a good album. You know, you guys really knocked it out of the park with that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
And before we get out of here, where can people go online to get more information about, about you, the album, tour dates, merchandise? Go ahead and plug your stuff.
Yeah, our Instagram is Meg Dia Music. We are touring in September, a couple East Coast dates, a lot on the West Coast, hopefully more soon. And yeah, the music videos for American Spirit, it's up on YouTube if you want to see some very interesting stuff going on.
Go watch it. It's a good video. It's great. So that was my interview with Dia Frampton. It was great to touch base with her. I did actually interview her years ago when she put out her first solo album for an article that I wrote for Huffington Post. So it was good to touch base with her. More information about where you can, follow Meg Dia and purchase their new album, Happy Sad, along with the Christmas album, December Darling, will be in the show notes for this episode at freshasthepodcast.com. And please remember to rate and review Breakin Recordz on Apple Podcasts if you can, and share the podcast as much as you can. I definitely want to build this up in its own right with a really good music-loving audience. So thanks again for listening. And remember, I have another podcast debuting later on this week called Renaissance Soul, which is dedicated to Detroit music history. And then also, I'm continuing on with the Fresh is the Word podcast. And then also on freshthepodcast.com, there'll be some non-podcast content like music premieres, possibly other sorts of premieres, and then also some mini reviews about albums or comics, stuff like that, So be on the lookout. Go to freshthepodcast.com. There'll be all the information about where you can follow Fresh is the Word online on any of the social media platforms. So once again, thanks for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Breaking records in the city where I live.